thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. We will be talking about integrating Power BI with Workplace, and specifically how these tools hopefully can be, provide a 1 + 1 = 3 experience. You've got two hosts today. You've got myself, Jamie McMahon. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for LineZero, and joining me is Greg. For those that don't know us, LineZero, we are a Workplace from Facebook partner. We are focused on employee experience and really making sure that you as organizations are getting the most and achieving measurable outcomes from your investment in employee experience tools, and specifically making sure that you're getting everything that you're expecting out of the Workplace from Facebook journey.
So what will be the outcome of the webinar today? When it comes to data and analytics, many people traditionally think finance, marketing, and operations as areas of the business where we have like hard data to really hone in on. But how do you measure the impact of employee experience, engagement, and corporate culture for your business? I would say that today, many businesses just don't. It's usually gut feel or qualitative. But the goal for today is to show you how with Workplace as a data set and Power BI, we can measure and trend corporate culture and engagement with, for example, profitability and retention, to see really how that investment on Workplace and your employee experience is yielding positive benefits. So before we get to that, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about Workplace. So what is the power of Workplace? I would say really corporate comms, employee experience, connection for all your people. That's really its superpower. It makes a really big company feel a bit smaller. And it has a familiar look and feel to the social tools we use in our everyday lives. So it's very accessible. Today, however, the theme is more about an advanced usage of Workplace. And that's how we're arriving at enabling businesses to leverage Workplace as an employee experience or culture data set. And before we get to that, I will pass it over to Jamie to talk about Power BI.
Awesome. Thank you. And so, part of this, obviously, we're here to chat about the, kind of the Venn diagram, the overlap between Power BI and Workplace from Facebook. But I recognize that some of you on this line may not be familiar with Power BI. Power BI is a data visualization platform. It is built from Microsoft. And really the reason we are mentioning this one in particular is it's been our experience that most of the companies that we work with and most of the companies that we come across have a pretty significant investment in Microsoft. And we recognize that this is probably already a tool, or at least some of the other tools in the toolbox, so to speak, are investments made in the Microsoft ecosystem. And so making sure that we're, creating an easier position for you to talk to IT, and also a system where we can aggregate all of your data in one spot is really, really important. And from that perspective, when we're talking about data and talking about Power BI, really the value in it, because Workplace has analytics, it has data that you can leverage on its own, but really the value of using a tool like Power BI with Workplace is correlation. And all of our environments, we have data at our fingertips. And I think we've almost got this drilled in us from all of these external sources telling us how important and how valuable data is. And one of the things that we don't talk about often is most companies find that human capital, people is really what drives your organization. And most instances, if you ask, what's limiting growth, for example, it's getting the right people on the bus in the right seats at the right time. And, with this dependency on human talent and on the people that we work with, it's funny how we oftentimes don't have the right ability to measure exactly, what the impact our team members are having, what their productivity is in relation to corporate performance and things of that nature. And so what we want to do, and the reason that we're talking about these two things together, is understanding that when we're leveraging two data sources that are distinct, one per se that is talking about employee experience or employee culture, communications, etc., and add that in conjunction with regular data that we use to track performance of the business, like profit, retention, etc., we're able to make much more intelligent decisions and hopefully eventually get to the point where we can become predictive, right? We can gain insights before they happen so that we can take corrective action to try and prevent that. That's the end of the day, utopia and nirvana, that we'd love to get to. So why Workplace and Power BI? And I think at the end of the day, right now, it's really around the employee experience and really understanding how important employee experience is into performance of a business. I think, I probably don't have to do a hard job convincing most of you on the line here, assuming that there's a number of folks here from within the HR comms professions that, live and breathe this day in and day out. But it's really, really clear, the impact of to energy, enthusiasm, motivation, performance, etc., that having a good employee experience, that having a sense of belonging and community at work, that having peers and people that you trust and can communicate with in a transparent fashion, how that leads to productivity, and how the inverse is also true. If we don't have that, we can get burnt out or we're not as productive. And I think there's no better evidence of that than the pandemic, which thrust us all into the situation where we really don't have, let's say, control of our environments. All of our interactions are, need to be intentional. And so in the sense of they need to be intentional, what can we do and how do we measure these things? So when we talk about employee experience, it's really important to understand that there's lots of data, lots of people, these are just a few of them. I'm sure that, HBR and other places will provide consistent feedback over the importance of highly engaged employees. And maybe I'll just pick one of these data points to speak to. But as an example, organizations with highly engaged employees have an average of 3-year revenue growth 2.3 times greater than companies whose employees are only engaged at an average level. And so obviously, as a business executive, as a leader, you're going to look at that and say, well, I want that, right? How do I achieve those results? And I think if we want to achieve those results, that's obviously something we need to manage towards. But we can't manage towards it if we can't actually measure it. And that's the key. We need to be able to measure it in order to manage it. And from an employee experience perspective, that's always historically been difficult, right? Especially in the pandemic where we're all remote. We've lost the ambient moments, if you will, those unintentional collisions of people that we run into each other, where probably a lot of those innovation moments happen, where you're just having an unscripted, unplanned meeting where great ideas happen. How can we do that? And then at the end of the day, us as business leaders, how can we actually show the business the impact that our investment in these types of employee experience tools is actually having to the business's performance? And I think that's ultimately what our objective is here, is to draw that correlation and show, A, we can measure this, but B, we can use this to create a plan to get to that type of performance or outcomes that we mean to get to. So with that, I will turn it over to Greg to speak a little bit more about the actual tools itself.
Perfect. Thanks, Jamie. So what you're seeing here is the dashboard itself. We have a proprietary connector in which we are able to integrate your workplace as a data set with Power BI. And what you're seeing here, this is just a general insight section, but what it'll show you is just an overview. So these are all the groups, these are the conversations that are happening at workplace. And if we go a little further than that, you can see we can dive into specific posts that are trending within those groups. On the right-hand side, and what makes this tool really powerful, is the filtering section. We can set specific date ranges. So if something really impactful happened in your business on that date range, we can say, this is exactly what that moment was. This is that event. This is why it was so impactful. This is why we saw that uptick in productivity or engagement. We can hone in on that and repeat it across the rest of the business. I'll also say you can see an engagement score here. We have our own algorithm that calculates that, and that is proprietary to us, and that helps us to better understand as we look at people, for example, even the types of posts and the types of personas in your business that are particularly engaging. So we have ambassadors. These are the people that are all in on employee experience. They really start the conversations and they contribute broadly to lots of conversations. They collaborate cross-departmental. And then we have our rising stars. These are people that have traditionally been a little more hesitant to engage, but now within the last certain date range, they are engaging in your business and they are engaging in the employee experience side. And then we have our conversation starters, and these are really the content creators within your business. And as a comms leader, I would find this very important, because if I know who the voices are in my business, I can use them to help democratize the management of information and the flow of information in my business. I can have a variety of speakers in my company, and I can understand where the culture starts and how we can take the learnings from those individuals and bring that more broadly across our organization and empower others to be effective content creators for our business too. And now here you're seeing a macro look at group activity. So I might want to know, what are the most engaging groups in my business? What are those groups doing different than other groups? Which departments are most engaging in my business, and what are they doing differently? If I can see what success looks like and break that down to even something like as simple as post type, for example, with photos, links, events, and videos, as you're seeing in the bottom left-hand corner, then I can tell those other groups that want to be more successful, hey, here's the secret sauce. This is what works in our organization. People here are visual learners, so we need to give them visual content. And what you're seeing here, this is like a macro view of engagement and what's trending. This is the real pulse of the organization in a single pane of glass. So you can set a specific date range and say, hey, we have a corporate event coming up. It's a virtual town hall. We want to know exactly during that period of time what's trending, what are people talking about, and what do they care about, so we can do our communications in a more targeted fashion. This is where I'm going to go to be able to do that. I can also filter out members, and this is really important for comms teams because communications, we're always speaking with the rest of the organization. So our stats are going to be inflated. And on the workplace platform, if you can only see a top 10, for example, that's not that helpful if we make up the top 5. So being able to go as broad as 250 people or even filter people out so that I'm not seeing certain comms individuals, that's going to be impactful so I can see those conversations happening. Now, if I were to go into my day of a life for a specific persona, and I'm a chief operations officer, and I want to understand where collaboration is happening, with this viewpoint, I can really find that. I can understand, okay, marketing and engineering team, they seem to be collaborating cross-functionally, and that's yielded a better, communication strategy to the masses around our product. That's been very successful. Now I can take a deep dive, see where this collaboration is happening, see where other departments are working with each other to understand how I can replicate that across my business, find where it would be efficient to have those collaborative moments, and make sure that we're being intentional about having that. And then I think this is the one we've all been waiting for. So if we just took a deep dive.
Before we jump into this one, actually, if we could jump back one, we've got a question from Lionel, because I know that they're probably going to dive into a really exciting conversation there. The question is this integration only pulling info from Workplace, or can you automatically publish insights into Workplace groups?
Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry, one more time for me.
And I can actually even probably answer it. The question is this integration only pulling info from Workplace, or can you automatically publish insights to Workplace groups?
Yeah, it's pulling information from Workplace, but we could pull information or data from a variety of sources and actually trend them together. It doesn't publish this information into groups. This is a dashboard that would live outside of Workplace that you would access or have published to you. Anything you want to add to that, Jamie?
No, and I think that that's actually the important piece. Is the intent here is that the assumption is that perhaps that Power BI is being used to manage other aspects of the business. And so what we don't want to introduce per se is another tool that uses a different dashboard that exists in some other place where you don't actually manage the rest of the business. And so is an ability to kind of consolidate and bring all of that place where you manage the business into one spot, hence why it sits in Power BI, let's say, versus in Workplace itself.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, there's a follow-up question. So if you had something else to add, feel free.
No, I was just going to say that's exactly it. So we don't want to have our executives, they're probably all used to visualizing data in one specific way. We don't want to introduce a new way that they have to learn. So part of the motivation or reasoning for even coming to market with this product is to help organizations provide tools that they're already familiar with and just introduce another data set.
And we have a kind of a follow-up or second question from Lionel. Any kind of Power BI integration to manage users, i.e. those not active enough to send reminders to update user fields in batch, etc.?
That's actually a great question. And we have two things that we're working on there. Yes, to your answer, we are working on that. It's not in the product today. And the other one we're actually working on that we've heard from a couple of our customers that seem really compelling would be they want to be able to look at groups that are not being used within the last 6 months and then create a logic to remove those groups that have not been used, let's say within 6 months or any time span of your choosing.
Perfect. Okay, now on to, I know I think we're the culmination, let's say, of combining workplace and external data sources, where I think we can have an exciting conversation about.
Perfect, thank you. So we just took a deep dive into unpacking workplace data on Power BI and how we can enrich your people's experience just with those insights. But the real power of the solution is introducing workplace as a data set in the trends and correlations that we're now able to make. So for example, if I look at August from September and I see that huge spike in engagement, and I also see that employee retention is becoming better as well, I can now understand, okay, there's a specific point in time, if I'm a CEO, that I should focus in on and understand what were the triggers, what levers were pulled, how did we come to this outcome where now we have a positive correlation with employee retention and average engagement. So at a minimum, I can take actions that were taken in that period of time and double down on those strengths. But at a maximum, I can understand exactly what my investment was into the employee experience. And I can further that investment now that I've identified that there's a positive correlation with employee retention and engagement. And you can see below another example of that. So if we are able to understand that employee engagement or corporate culture, for example, are positively correlated with profit, we know that we're seeing an ROI on workplace and any other employee experience tool that we have in play today. These trends, they're not just possible for, let's say, profit or employee retention. It's really any data source that you have already in your Power BI toolbox. So for example, if we were just looking at supply chain efficiencies and we were trending that with cross functionality inside of workplace, we can now understand that the more integrated our business becomes, the more efficient we are, and that's coming from employee experience as well. Any questions from the group on this before I move into next steps? Because I think this is pretty compelling. Also, just note here, we can also filter down by date. We can customize these views. We have a lot of capabilities here.
Yeah, I'll just read it. Well, we'll give folks just maybe a minute to come up with questions if they have any. Is around, we focused here on employee retention and profit, but really the problem we're trying to solve, and I think what we hear quite often is, how do we really help quantify or provide an ROI on investment in employee experience tools and the investment in communication tools and HR tools? This is something that's always been very difficult. And Greg, you mentioned this in the beginning. What we're trying to do is say, hey, we can actually, with data now, create a very clear connection, right? Maybe it's not completely true. You can't say that, okay, we were more profitable this month explicitly because we increased, employee engagement. There's probably other factors that went into that. But the more data that we can have, the more correlation that we can draw, the tighter and stronger that argument becomes, where I think can hopefully lead to further investment in employee experience investments and, really a tighter appreciation for what that means to the business.
Exactly. We're going away from gut feel and we're leaning into analytics the same way we do with every other part of our business. We're empowering that CEO. Now she can see her investments have a clear and distinct ROI, or at least we have a trend to operate on.
So we do have another question from Lionel, actually. Will you explain how complicated it is to set up such an integration? I know the workplace side, but curious with the Power BI one, do we need the tenant super admin? I'm assuming he means the Office 365 tenant.
Yes, so we have everything packaged up. It's actually all within Azure. We can implement it within your technical environment. And maybe before we dive into that, I should talk about the offer that you'd be eligible for today. So I'll move us in and then we'll readdress that. So the next steps from today's session, if you're using Workplace and Power BI already, and you want more clarity around how those technologies can be used to reveal employee experience and culture and how that positively and quantitatively impacts your business, drop us a line at engage@linezero.com. If you're not using Workplace yet, no problem. Think about how it could positively impact your business, book a session with us, and we'll do some brainstorming on how Workplace could really enrich your employee experience for everyone. And then, Lionel, I know that this one will be important for you, maybe. We're doing a giveaway. So one lucky winner is going to receive a special gift. If you are already a Workplace customer and your business already uses Microsoft technologies, then drop us a line. We're going to enter you into a draw and you could win this solution for a 6-day trial. So what that means is we'll technically implement this in your environment and grant you access for a period of 60 days to understand if this is something you want to have in the longer term.
So while that's digested, and maybe I'll go back and speak at a high, I won't get into the details over the earlier question of the technical implementation. The short, not too technical answer to that is effectively there are some specific permissions that the application needs into Workplace, for example, to be able to read specific people sets and data. That's all configured into our Power BI package that we've created. And in terms of how this gets deployed, as Greg alluded to, this is built and designed for within Azure. That is something that we could host, but the assumption is typically that would be stored in your Azure environment so that it follows your compliance, all of your rules and governance requirements, such that we don't have the same type of security rigor, let's say, that or concerns that you have another external party with access to your data. All the data is yours. It all sits within the Power BI and Microsoft ecosystem. We're just helping to facilitate it with our Power BI package, basically.
So another maybe selfish plug for some of my teammates. Jack and actually Jamie will be hosting a session on SharePoint and Workplace together. That's on June 17th. So yeah, feel free to drop us a line, but save your spot. If you go to the LineZero LinkedIn page, you'll be able to join in on that as well.
And just a note of this is a series of Microsoft and Workplace webinars that we've been doing. We did one for Teams, which I think you can find on either our website or on LinkedIn about a month and a half ago. There's obviously this one with Power BI. This next one is SharePoint, and we'll be coming up with a Viva one kind of the tail end of the summer once some of the final items from Viva kind of go general availability. There's still some items that becoming tighter, I think, in terms of what that product's going to do and how the pricing works and all the rest of that stuff. But we want to make sure and it's actually come to full market before we do a piece on that, because I'm sure that that's also top of mind. So just to say that it is kind of a theme of Microsoft-centric, better together, if you will, stories, and the next one up is SharePoint.
Perfect.
And over to questions. There was a question from Rickard around pricing. Yeah, we do have specific pricing per month. I think the ask would be, if there are any specific questions, please let us know or contact us. We can get you a quote around what this would look like for your particular organization. We've got a couple of different packages, and so ones that are per user per month and others that are kind of more fixed fee depending on what you're using. So I'll say it varies, but we do try and make sure that it's obviously less of an investment than the Workplace platform itself, as let's say a barometer, if you will. Any other questions? Just checking to see if anything else has come in. There's one question around, I don't have Power BI, but I have Workplace. Can I still use this?
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. So we can either set up Power BI for you, at least in the capacity that you'd be able to take advantage of these reports. Not too difficult for us to do. Or alternatively, as Jamie alluded to, we can actually host it as a service for you. Although most organizations we work with do prefer to host it themselves.
Yep. Terrific. So I will say, if you do have any questions or you'd love to have a conversation, you can either reach out to us directly with engage@linezero.com. You can also feel free to put in your email address into the chat window here. Obviously, it doesn't go to all participants. It would just go to us. That will let us know and kind of be a signal for us to connect and have a conversation. And finally, if you are looking for to nominate yourself, for example, that you kind of satisfy the criteria, i.e., you have a Microsoft investment and you have a workplace investment already. And the reason, again, transparently, that we have those as kind of stipulations around the giveaway is that if you already have a Microsoft footprint and already have a workplace footprint, the lift isn't so significant for us to deploy this. If you have neither, the work is just a little bit more, and not that we just want to make sure that we can be efficient with your time and with ours. So that if you do kind of satisfy that criteria, please just drop in your email address into the chat window, and would love to have the conversation. There is another question actually from Mirza. Can we use this with the Power BI desktop, the free version?
Oh, good question. Yes, you can. So the requirement is that from a licensing perspective, you either have the pro or premium version, at least for like a single seat or a license, so that that person can be the one to author or provision or make available the reports. But with the free version, you can consume reports. If you didn't have pro or premium as a license level, for example, at all within your organization, the cost for a single or 2 or 3 licenses isn't that great.
Yep. Okay, and I do see a few people dropping in your email addresses to participate in the raffle. Much appreciated. Yeah, maybe we'll give another minute or two just to make sure that we're sensitive to time. Actually, we have another question in from Rosa. Do you work only with Workplace, or can you make API connections with other tools?
Great question. We do have a sister business that does more work of that nature. If you would like, also drop your email in and we can have that side of the business connect with you, because we definitely do work of that nature.
And I will say actually that maybe I might take a different interpretation of the question. If we're trying to correlate data between Workplace and let's say an HRIS system or like Dayforce or ServiceNow or something like that, we are able to make those connections and create that correlation between Workplace and those other systems. We don't have the pre-built package like we do for Workplace that we kind of showed you here today. We would have to kind of build it out with you and understand what you're looking to do. But it's absolutely, with technology, the issue is never can we do it, it's how and how much. So yes, would love to have the conversation. Yes, we can connect to other data sources beyond Workplace and correlate data between Workplace and let's say an HRIS system. We just don't have that pre-packaged, if you will, as an offering. Okay, I'm seeing mainly emails come in as the questions, or not actual questions come in. So maybe what we'll do is we'll give another 30 seconds for questions. I know we're a little bit over here, we're 2 minutes over time. So I'll appreciate it, all of you. Most of you have stuck around until the end. So thank you for that. And if there are any questions, then of course, let us know.
Okay, Jamie, so I actually have a private question here that was sent. So can we use this with Power BI Desktop, the free version?
Yep. Yeah, I think we actually have answered that one. I did see that one in the question and answer, but we do have a new one from Tammy. We have Vimeo, Constant Contact, MailChimp, RingCentral, Confluence, and Workplace. Looking to create a report that aligns across those. Is that something you can assist me with as well? I imagine it is not out of the box. Would love to explore. The answer is yes. I think for this one, there's obviously we would also love to know more, because there obviously can be quite a lot of complexity with what you're asking for and what you're trying to actually show, or what correlation you're hoping to see. But the short version is yes, we can help. Okay, I'll say if there's any final questions, please just let us know at engage@linezero.com. We'd be happy to answer those. And thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. And until next time, hope to see you at a SharePoint webinar next month, and have a great day. Thank you.